So I noticed that you focus a lot on emotion and
Yes,
conditioning, and you talk a lot about that, and I haven't found that to be very common in
yes,
spirituality and
it's
so
very
on.
rare. Yeah.
And that's what really attracted me to your videos and content and so on. And I did want to ask you about what you don't approach and how you see it. I'm very curious about inquiry into what feels like a me here, and to feel it out, to feel out the sensations and to investigate that sense. Like for example, in the visual field, in the senses, do you see any value behind that? How do you think it works, if it does, and have you practiced something of the sort?
So I personally would not call uh, investigation of any sensation inquiry. Uh, so what I call inquiry, for example, are methods like Ramana's method of, and that is also taught by many teachers, of trying to find the one who's experiencing, or who am I? Well, who's asking that question? Like trying to find an entity that uh, that you think is you. You won't find it. So even you will not find anything in your conscious experience which asks the question, who am I? And that's actually what the method is based on. The method is based on exhausting the mind from all attempts to find it, and it can be excruciating. Uh, and and I think that all methods that are uh, based on that are trying to find or decompose the ego without the emotional work, or without uh, focusing on the conditioning, are somewhat dangerous, because they either will not work, or if they do work, they oftentimes result in a very kind of psychotic kind of state. So, so from my perspective, investigation of direct sensate experience is a much more uh, direct, and also at the same time much safer path. Um, Now, I generally approve investigation like any experience, for as long as it's direct, right? So yes, the bulk of the spiritual path is investigating the emotional difficulty, the energetic difficulty, because so the bulk of the spiritual path is investigating the suffering as it comes in the emotional sense. But uh, the the five aggregates, so to speak, right? So the hearing, vision, bodily sensations, they are also sensate direct experience from which you are separated from the mind. So approaching them directly and investigating them directly is just as valid method of practice as investigating emotions directly, because they're also all very physical, and they're very sensate. So for example, vipassana body scanning technique, wonderful practice, right? You can practice even during daytime. You can practice, for example, taking your attention directly on the hearing, the sounds. In some guided meditations that I did before, and I plan to record a video with some guided meditation, we start with, I do this in my retreat. So we start with focusing on breathing, which is also a direct experience, then followed by uh, trying to focus on approaching directly the experience of sound, just the sound around you, then the experience of sensations in the body, and then later after that we go deeper into the emotion experience. All, all of those experiences are direct experiences. Now the interesting thing about bodily sensations, vision and hearing, is that in the normal calm state of mind, I'm not talking about something when a tiger eats you, but in a normal kind of normal state of mind, they all very in the ultimate reality, they're all very beautiful, very clear, very pristine, very enjoyable, and very calm. So the difficulty of uh, focusing on them, the difficulty of keeping your attention on them, is actually because there's something else that is constantly pulling your attention away, and that's the unresolved suffering. And so what tends to happen because of this is that even though when you practice if you practice this, if you practice giving the attention to your direct experience, let's say vision, of hearing, or your neutral bodily sensations such as breath and other things, that if you practice that, and if you're successful at that, let's say you spent like half an hour where most of your attention was there, or an hour or something like that, that what you will tend to notice is that in the subsequent days, oh, now suddenly there is more, because there's some sort of a form of a rebellion of the ego, because the ego doesn't want you to keep your attention there, you see. And so what you'll notice is that in the subsequent days there's more emotional reactivity. There's like you will become more you will not necessarily become more calm from just putting your attention on this neutral parts of your experience directly. That's not possible. You can only become more calm in an effortless way by investigating and transcending the suffering. But what will happen is that as you practice it, the other part of it, which prevents you from being there effortlessly, so to say, will also start to become more visible, you see. And from that perspective, it's a good practice. So you can practice it, just don't expect that you can circumvent or bypass this other part, right? So if you practice, whether in meditation or if you're taking a walk, if you practice putting direct attention on what you see, on what you hear, right? So then don't be surprised when you will then, if you notice that this itself exacerbates or kind of makes the ego tantrums more pronounced, and that would be good, because that would be now that would be the time to focus on whatever you're feeling emotionally or energetically. And if you're doing this right, is that actually, if you're doing this practice right, if you actually truly investigating your direct experience of vision, hearing, then it has to happen. It is bound to happen, because you cannot really circumvent anything. Because the only reason that your attention isn't effortlessly resting on all of these senses is because it is continuously pulled to the unresolved suffering. That's the only reason. Does it make sense?
Yeah, that was a great answer. Yeah, and I relate to that. That like a lot of stuff does come up after investigating the senses afterwards.
Yes.
Like it's so clear, the
Exactly.
energetics and the emotions.
Yes.